Good morning, viewers. Today I am present before you with the work of Rabindranath Tagore, Gitanjali. In today's podcast, I will be talking about how mysticism is a very important aspect of Tagore's Gitanjali. Before I begin the podcast, it is advisable that you keep a notebook and a pen so that you can jot down the important points relating to this particular topic. It is further advisable to use earplugs for listening to the podcast. So here I begin. Mysticism represents the spiritual side of the human mind and the human personality. Man surely has something of Satan in him, but man has at the same time something truly angelic and divine in him. Both these sides of man show themselves in man's thoughts, his desires, and in his actions and deeds. In most human beings, it is the beastly or the devilish or the satanic side which dominates, but there are a small minority of persons in whom the divine element is predominant, in whom the spiritual element is seen to be dominated. These persons may be called mystics. A mystic sees God within himself in the form of light or some kind of illumination, but he also sees God or the divine spirit in the visible universe outside, and more particularly in the various objects of nature. In the history of mysticism, the existence of God or the divine spirit within the human mind itself, and which then also demanded that a human being blessed with visions of God should also mold his actions and social behavior in accordance with the requirements of those visions. Mysticism began to emphasize the purity of character and the need for flawless social conduct. Mysticism is a compound of various ideas which include a firm belief in God, an equally firm belief in the human soul and its immortality, a firm belief that the individual human soul is capable of perceiving and even seeing God or the divine spirit either within itself or through the objects and the phenomena of nature, and so on. Mysticism is a spiritual force which has always done enormous good to mankind. Tagore's mysticism is to be found preeminently in his Gitanjali. It was because of his Gitanjali that the Nobel Prize for Literature was conferred upon him in 1913. The West began to regard Tagore as a mystic on the basis of his Gitanjali. But it was surely a misfortune for Tagore that the West began to expect everything that he wrote to have a mystical meaning. Tagore is a mystic largely and chiefly in Gitanjali, and it is a mistake to look for mysticism everywhere in his writings, though we have some elements of it in the form of the Jivan Devta doctrine, which finds an expression in Tagore's Mansi, Sonartari, and Chitra. Gitanjali is a great mystical work, and its mysticism will always endure. Here is a book in which mysticism is to be found in its purest and most unalloyed form. Here is a book in which Tagore expresses his firm convictions about God, about the human soul, and about the ultimate goal of the human soul. Here is a book free from all kinds of material considerations and worldly desires or ambitions. Tagore seeking a communion with God and feeling sure that he would succeed in his aspiration. The mystical life is a contemplative life, and it is a life in which the individual shows a complete detachment from all worldly concerns and worldly pursuits. A mystic need not renounce the world altogether, but an attitude of detachment is absolutely necessary. A true mystic has no desire for worldly power or pelf or prosperity or social influence. Then, what is a mystic's reward? Well, his reward is the spiritual strength which he acquires through his adoration of God and through his identification with God, who represents perfection of all kinds, including the perfection of beauty, love, and virtue. All the elements of mysticism are to be found in the poems of Gitanjali. Indeed, Gitanjali is steeped in mysticism, though, in order really to appreciate its mysticism, we must set aside our worldly concerns and materialistic preoccupations and also forget for the time being that the author of Gitanjali was himself a man very much involved and even entangled in political and social activities, and was, besides, a great traveler who undertook many foreign tours and delivered numerous lectures on secular subjects. The very opening poem shows Tagore as a mystic. In it, Tagore asserts the immortality of the human soul, even though the human body is mortal. Thou hast made me endless, such is thy pleasure, says Tagore to God. In the third poem, Tagore says to God, the light of thy music illumines the world. My heart longs to join in thy song. God is seen as a musician, so that music becomes the controlling power in the universe, and it also captivates God's worshippers such as Tagore. Tagore acknowledges the need of purity in life and in one's conduct, and it is this realization which makes him promise to God that he would always try to keep his body pure, to keep all untruths out of his thoughts, and to drive all evils away from his heart. The sanctification of one's conduct in real life, as we have already noted above, is one of the essential beliefs of the true mystic. However, Tagore makes it clear that complete renunciation is not at all necessary in order to get closer to God. A mystic himself may renounce the world, but renunciation is not the mystic's message to other people. In poem 11, Tagore urges God's worshippers to seek God not in temples and churches, but in the fields where the tiller is tilling the hard ground, and on the roads where the path maker is breaking stones. Thus, here Tagore teaches us the lesson that we should seek God in the midst of the common workmen and laborers. In another poem, the mystic's assertion of his individual identity is seen. In poem after poem, Tagore looks forward to meeting God, to standing before God face to face, or to having a spiritual communion with God. Many are the poems in which he expresses this longing, this hope, and even this conviction. Tagore discovers a perfect sweetness has blossomed in the depth of his heart. This sweetness has undoubtedly been caused by God's proximity to him. In other words, Tagore emphasizes the divinity within himself. He expresses his certainty that God loves him, and so he says that even if he does not call God in his prayers and even if he does not keep God in his heart, God's love would still wait for his love. In another poem, Tagore asks God why he stands behind the whole crowd of people, thus hiding himself in the shadows instead of coming to him as his lover. In poem number 47, Tagore says that he wants God to appear before his eyes as the first of all the lights and all the forms. This shows his longing for a visit from God. Tagore's heart overflows with the mystic fervor. His pantheistic belief finds a clear expression in the poem in which he says that the same stream of life which runs through his veins runs also through the world, that the same life shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numerous blades of grass, that the same life is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, and that he feels his limbs being made glorious by the touch of that same stream of life. Tagore says that he is explicitly speaking like a mystic in the poem 76, wherein day after day before God face to face, and that he would stand there with folded hands. Tagore repeats this idea 3 or 4 times in this poem, which concludes with the following words: And when my work shall be done in the world, O King of Kings, alone and speechless shall I stand before thee face to face. So this was a note on Tagore's usage of mysticism in the work Gitanjali. Please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments, and here's wishing you a great day ahead. Thank you.